Welcome to Dan's On Site, Episode 2, a podcast and YouTube show dedicated to all things real estate. I am Dan Dutton, and I'm joined here with Dan Goaley.
Thank you all for witnessed the first one, and for any newbies, welcome to the second episode.
First one, it was our first one, right? I mean, it started out a little rough, but went all right.
We ad-libbed it.
We've gotten pretty good feedback, I think, since then. So we have a great show today. We're very excited about our interview coming up. The Dans actually went on site this week, and we have an interview with Tom Baldwin, Ted Hawley, but we'll get to that more in a little bit. First, I thought we'd just hit on a little bit of the news of the week. I think the big news that came out basically as we're recording the show is that retail sales jumped 17.7% in May. That's the biggest monthly jump ever in sales. Of course, it was following the biggest drop in sales ever.
They only go up.
They only go up.
The previous month.
But what are you seeing out there in retail sales? It seems like stores are coming back. Everybody's coming back strong.
Yeah, the vibe overall, everybody's out and about, bars, restaurants. I mean, you drive down the road now, you see parking lots a little bit more full than they were 30 days ago, even 15 days ago. So the overall feeling, governor just opened some stuff up yesterday. So, we'll see what happens in the next month or so. Hopefully there's not the same second wave several months down the road, but for right now, everybody's excited.
So on the other side of that, I saw an interesting story that McDonald's sales actually fell 5% in May. But I guess they have a lot of international locations, and in other countries, they were making them shut down drive-thrus and everything. And we were just talking a week ago how the drive-thrus were saving the restaurants.
Drive-thrus certainly are. McDonald's, as we know, is getting a little bit more active in this particular market. So even though, you might see some overall downturn, I think they're picking some Midwestern markets to expand.
So hotels, some never closed. Some, I guess, did okay. My wife and I actually have a wedding coming up in about 2 weeks. We're going to do our first...
You're getting married?
I'm getting married, no. Not our wedding, somebody else's wedding. Anyway, we're going to do our first hotel trip since all this started. I'd be interested to know what the audience thought about hotels, but I know you've been talking to some hotel groups. What have you been hearing?
Anything along Interstate 80, I mean, we've heard some hotel numbers that have been running less than 10% occupancy, and those have been in the heart of actually Omaha or in the heart of bigger cities. Some of the groups that we work with mainly have units actually along Interstate 80. All the different, from Kearney to Grand Island to North Platte and even, closer into Omaha and Lincoln, is that a lot of their nights, even on their slowest nights, they're 60, 70, sometimes a couple nights they've even reached 100% occupancy, which is great. A lot of those operators run lean. So even though you hear kind of the news of how bad some of the hospitalities are, that's true, but there are some out there that are doing just fine.
Yeah, obviously some chains shut down completely. Others stayed open. I'd be interested to know when everybody watching this or listening to this on podcasts thinks they're going to go back to hotels and stay hotels. When will you feel comfortable doing that? I know we got an email from the hotel we're staying at about, the extra precaution, the extra cleaning they're doing, the double, triple cleaning that they do after each stay and all kind of that stuff.
Well, some of the chains, they don't have the morning buffets. It's a grab-and-go breakfast for everybody. If you want a cup of coffee, they hand deliver it. They don't allow you to get your own cup. So it's it turns into full service instead of self-service for a lot of those flags.
So we're very excited to bring our interview this week. Like I said before, the Dans actually went on site to do an interview with Tom Baldwin and Ted Hawley. Together, they own a number of great bars and restaurants in Des Moines, Omaha, Sioux City, Annie's, The Exchange, Beer Can Alley, Wellman's, Blue Toro, just to name a few. So we get to talk to them. Very excited about this.
Yeah, if you've been to any bar that's in the Capital District, any of those down there, West Des Moines, downtown Des Moines, you've certainly come across one of their bars in the past. It's really, they have a great operation.
So we get to talk a little bit about COVID, what they've experienced during COVID, and the future, what the future looks like for them. So everybody, please enjoy the interview, and we'll be back afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, today we have Tom Baldwin, Ted Hawley. You guys own bars and restaurants, a few together, several separate. So maybe you guys could just take a couple seconds here and tell us about your histories, what you're doing now, just a little background on you guys.
Well, I got into the food business in 1987, doing some pizza, started a pizza chain, and then in 1999, I bought a nightclub and changed it into a beach bar and had a great time with it, and we've opened up a bunch of bars ever since. Sports bars, dance bars, party bars, disco bars, just college bars, all sorts of different bars, and ran into Teddy a few years ago and joined with him, and we've done some country bars.
So Tom, you had Home Team Pizza, right?
Correct.
So there's going to be a lot of people in Omaha and Des Moines that hear this. They might remember 3 a.m. pizza back in the day.
Yeah, we delivered late. It was that kind of pizza.
It was that kind of pizza.
If you remember ordering.
It wasn't the pizza you brought home for lunch. It was pizza you brought home after the bar.
It was cheap pizza.
Ted, what about you?
Well, when Tom got in the bar business, I was still in junior high, so I got into it in about, that's my I had to drop an old joke in there.
Yeah.
No, I got in October of 2009. I worked at Wells Fargo for about 4 months. I knew that wasn't for me. I was 22 at the time, and we opened our first bar called Heroes. It was on the second floor of the Court Center building, where we still operate 3 places out of now, but started it with my cousin at the time then. We were business partners at the time then, and kind of just, it was in a little hole in the wall, and not really a big entrance to see from the street, and kind of just good timing for us then too. Everybody my age was just moving to Des Moines with their first job, had money in their pocket the first time, and my cousin was 5 years older and had been there for that time too, so we kind of just got lucky with that, and it spun off to do some different stuff. We started Beer Can Alley about a year later. We have handful of places in Des Moines, handful of places in Omaha. We just sold one in Okoboji in February, right before COVID hit. So we kind of got lucky with that sale. But yeah, other than that, probably 3-4 years now. Tom and I have been doing some places together. We saw some stuff separate, but it's been interesting.
So in Omaha, you guys got Annie's and Beer Can Alley and the Exchange.
Yep.
And I think those are interesting because they're all true bars. They're entertainment. Probably, I'm guessing you depend on that Thursday, Friday night, Saturday night crowd, that event crowd. So now that we're in COVID, what do we do with places like that? What are you guys doing with the places like that now?
Well, it's been hard to really answer right now because we just, about 2 weeks ago, they kind of lifted to be able to even open those back up at all. And then, with some of the protesting and stuff too, especially in Des Moines, I can't speak for Omaha as much, but a bunch of windows and stuff got broken out in all the buildings on Court Ave where all my places are in Des Moines. So we were really open one Thursday night to this point. So, by this point we were hoping to have, some what you can do, what you can't do, and just kind of figure it out. But we're still kind of working through that. So we're hoping to get a good indication of what you kind of can do and what works this weekend. They just lifted the 50% rule in Iowa. So
where are they at now? Does it go 50, 75%?
No, it's 100%.
It goes all 100%?
It's 100% starting this morning.
Still have to do the 6-foot social distancing now.
But there's no group sizes anymore, so the rules literally just changed this morning again, so we'll start over, and it's kind of every week seems to be something new or something different, so you got to just kind of adjust with whatever.
So this weekend
says.
you guys are going to be 100, as close as you can get to 100%.
We're going to go about 75-80% just to give some space in some of our places. I think you're doing something
in
similar.
our places, we've been, a lot of them have been open for a month now, somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks, and some of them even a little bit longer when they weren't in the certain counties that weren't allowed. But and we've been operating at 50% capacity, and a lot of places have bounced back fairly well. It's certain locations are a little slower than others, and they've just come around after being open for a month because some people were still afraid to come out and go in. So, but the people that are coming out are the people that want to come out, and the people that are still nervous about COVID or staying home or avoiding it or taking extra precautions. So I'd say there's been a little, there's been a whole gambit of reaction, and
So is it
But
difference
been supportive.
because you have all bar facilities and then you have some that serve food as well.
He has a bunch
Combination
of
of
sort
You have a couple
He has a bunch of
true
sort of-
restaurants.
Yeah, we have some true restaurants. We have some sports bars which serve teetering on the edge of 50% food. Some over 50%, some right at 50%. But they still like have a good happy hour for drinking. But they're not late night establishments or anything. So you'd be like a Buffalo Wild Wings type of atmosphere on a local.
So how has the food business held up during this time?
The food business has been good at those bars anyway, because people wanted to get out. They wanted, I don't know how the true restaurants are. The ones that we have are still not open yet because of the capacity situation. I wanted 100%. But the bar ones, people were itching to get out and to be around other people, and they get that in a bar environment. And the governor allowed the places with food to open up. So they came out. We had to push the food. She said, "Hey, they got to eat food. They can't just be out here to booze." And so the food actually has increased because people have a little more pressure on them to eat food there. So it's been great. I mean, in some cases the sales have been terrific.
So this is obviously a real estate show, and we try to get into some more specifics of real estate. So I'm curious, being shut down, having to be shut down, I'm guessing you guys both got PPP loans and went through that whole process. How has it been dealing with landlords during this time? What has your experience been with landlords?
We're figuring it out right now. We got a meeting today actually with some of them, and some have been good, some have been not good. Like for us too, the one place we do have with food was in Sioux City, and that one's been okay. But you can probably answer that better than I can.
Well, I
been
think
bold.
you hit the nail on the head. We've had some really good responses. Some landlords that are willing to work, and some that are pretty much strict about pay your rent on time. So I'd say maybe 80% of the landlords I've dealt with have been open to working with us on the rent, whether it's deferring the rent until a later date or taking actually some abatement. But the PPP allowed us, I'd say the PPP was great because you could use up to 25% at the time. Now I think it's 40% towards other matters besides just the payroll. So one of those was the big ticket item, which was the rent. And so if you were clever and creative, you could maybe strike a deal with your landlord to pay a little bit forward in exchange for some abatement. And that's worked out in some instances. Some were just deferred, but in most cases, I think the landlords were pretty good about the situation.
Did they add term on the back end, or is it just
Some
adding
have.
higher monthly rent?
Yes, we've had two
That's in your
landlords
existing
that
term.
said,
Had both.
we'll give you the 2 months, but you got to pick up 2 more months on the back end so that they get the same number. And I'm guessing those are the landlords that were able to work with their banks about interest only or deferring their mortgage payments also. So I think they worked most landlords were sensitive to the needs of the tenants.
And the PPPs depended on what kind of place it was. Some of the places we have that have a little bit lower rent, it was fine because, especially in our stuff too, is a lot of ours are minimum wage workers, and you're getting portions of that too. But when you're paying 20, 30 grand a month in rent, you're not even covering, maybe even a month of that on it too. And our place in Sioux City just opened in the middle of February, so it opened up after the time you're supposed to have that open, so it didn't even qualify for it. So our Sioux City location qualified for no programs because it opened, 3 weeks before all this stuff hit, and which is too bad because it was killing it. We weren't even fully open there yet. We'd been 3 weeks of soft
We had
open.
that momentum going.
Just weekends, and it was going, far exceeding expectations. And then, had to shut down. But if they qualified for no programs, and then it was place by place.
Was the
really.
landlord more willing to work with you because that was so new up there, or less willing? Because I could see that going two ways.
A little bit of both. Right away, I think the first month we paid just half of the rent right away, and it's a lower rent space there anyway, so it wasn't as you could deal with that a little bit, but they wanted their money, and we've been paying that all the time. There'll be no back end, no nothing. It's been having to pay it, but again, it's one of our more reasonable spots. So they do that in Des Moines or Omaha, and some of our places. It's like, well,
Right.
it ain't gonna work.
So today we're all together right now because we're getting ready to go inside and look at a space for lease. COVID's going on. We just had a long conversation about bars being closed, that kind of stuff. Just 30 seconds, whatever. What's your thought process? How do you guys think through loud truck in the background? How do you guys think through expanding during this time?
Well, the way I look at it is that we're going to get back. I'm tired of hearing the phrase the new normal. I think we're going to get back to normal. It's just whether it's now, 2 months or 6 months or a year from now. So you got to be forward thinking. You got to be thinking down the road. Here could be a good time to take advantage of lower rents. We hope. I think there's going to be more vacant spaces. Certainly, I've looked around and I've seen some places that have closed up for good. And nobody's immune from that situation. You've got national companies that are closing up. And so with that, being the current situation, I think there's going to be some available space. There's going to be some landlords, especially in existing spaces, that are more willing to work with you on lower rents just to get some people in there. And a guy like me and a guy like Ted can look at these opportunities and pick and choose and maybe negotiate with the landlord. And if we can get a space, then we're willing to make that investment. But we also, over the last 3 months, have had time to reflect on our operations and what's profitable and what's not. So we have to change too. We have to adapt. We can't just open up every place we see because it's a good location like we thought we could before. Now we have to pick and choose. So I think, it's a good opportunity, but you still have to have a plan that you think is going to work.
I think you have to be, like you said, extremely picky. It has to be the right spot. Maybe you don't take as many chances. You have to know it's the right fit. And, as many spots as we have and stuff too is every once in a while you kind of have a dud that you keep going along. Maybe it's time to cut bait on those and focus on a better spot somewhere else too, just to make sure you can maximize profits.
And there's probably going to be some new paragraphs in the lease. Some exit strategies and some pandemic clauses.
Yeah, I've seen some interesting ones. That's for another show, but yeah, there's been some really interesting ones come up recently. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for taking a little bit of time and doing this interview. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Well, let me first thank Tom and Ted again for taking time out of their day to spend a few minutes with us to tell us what their thoughts were on their business and going through COVID and everything like that. Goaley, what were your takeaways from the interview?
Well, it's interesting how those two, Tom mentioned a couple things. He mentioned, he's not a big fan of the new normal. I'm not either. He also mentioned that he and Ted are forward thinking, they're finding new locations, and I think that that's awesome. I mean, what you hear is a lot of bars, restaurants are going dark, and it's unfortunate for them. These two individuals managed to, immediately, and we knew that from day one talking to Tom. He was one of those individuals that immediately kicked it into high gear and just, found a plan. Instead of hitting the panic button and not knowing what to do, he's on the phone talking to his lenders, his landlords. He was talking to us as brokers, and I'm sure other people as well. And he really set course with it. I'm sure Ted was lockstep with him. So, it's really good that, those two have settled along their plan. And I think they're even a little bit earlier or in the early phase. And there's other individuals like them that, we're not quite out of COVID yet, but they're certainly looking to expand. And I think that that's awesome.
Yeah, I think well said. They're shooting for opportunities now. Mm-hmm. They want to take opportunities wherever they can. They came out of COVID in okay shape. You heard them both say that, the bar, they were able to work out their deals with their lenders, with their landlords on the bar stuff, the restaurant stuff, made it through, survived, did okay. And so now that they're at a point where can we find the opportunities? Where will landlords give us deals? Where are the A locations? Maybe where are the A locations that haven't been available for decades?
Yeah.
And where can we take advantage of that?
Yeah, I think, there certainly is, as Tom said when we were doing our tour, he's not looking for any deal. He's looking for quote unquote home run deals or something a little bit better. And, he's not in a position to where he needs to hurry up and do something, or he is in a position where he can be a little bit more selective, I should say. and he's being selective. And Tom and Ted together, they're, if you listen to the interviews, they're to the northern part of Iowa, and they're even looking down in some of the states in Missouri too. So they're definitely regional, and I think they're definitely two of the people that'll find some good locations going forward.
Yeah, thanks again, guys. We appreciate that. So now I think the number one thing that we got feedback on last
From
week
episode
was, no, we got a few feedbacks on it, was story of the week.
Yes.
So, Goaley, I'm going to turn it over to you. It's your story of the week.
Yeah, this week's my turn. Dan and I, let me back up a little bit further. There's a little neighborhood center called Boardwalk Square, and it's on 119 in the Pacific. And essentially, if you can visualize it, it's 5 buildings that wraps around from Brother Sebastian's all the way north to a little office building. And the original owners that I worked for over 10 years, we had a little bit of a vacancy issue there. There's some turnover of some tenants. And we really went in and worked hard and cut some good deals and got the occupancy way up. And they were in a phase of their career where it was time for them to move on to other opportunities. And in January of 2018, there was a new group that came in and acquired it. And they were a group that they were mainly industrial office, I would call retail-ish, not their bag, but Dan and I certainly have overall opportunity of that. And when we came in early part of 18, we set a plan up to somehow, the quote is unloaded, but they weren't long-term people. They were very good at what they were doing. They had other opportunities and we kind of sat down and set out a plan. And so what we did is we took the entire parcel, which again was of 5 buildings, and we did something very unique. And we took each individual building and created its own parcel. So now each building has their own address, and then the overall common land, which would be parking lots and green space areas, became its own parcel. So essentially we created a condo regime. And what we had found was there were more buyers to buy an individual 15,000 square foot building than there are that would buy at 65,000 feet. And so initially people thought we were absolutely crazy. And I think it was a month ago or 2 months ago is when we closed on the last 3 parcels. So we took one entire neighborhood retail center of 65,000 feet. We converted it into 5 individual buildings with 1 common area, and we sold off all 5 buildings to a total of 3 investors. One bought 1 building, or 2 individuals bought 1 building each, and then 1 person bought 3. So we worked on that for years. It was a great project. It was certainly a story we can tell everyone. It took everyone involved, from management, brokerage, legal, and some engineers, and it's something that we're definitely proud of.
I think it's a great story, and it tells that creativity really won the day. Now we did 2 leases there, I think, in that time. Mm-hmm. So there was a little tiny bit of lease up, but not much. And I think we did the whole thing, right? We sold it the first time, and then we closed on the last sale in about 30 months, 29 months, something like that. Mm-hmm. So it was a fun project to work on, that's for sure.
Yeah, very unique in town. You don't see a lot of, I can only think of, off the top of my head, maybe one other project that's been that way, and it's on the east side of Hy-Vee. There's a little collection of office buildings down there, but it's very unique. We're starting to see that in other parts of the nation too. Now that we were digging in to try and look for ideas, we're seeing some of that, where larger retail centers that are, not 65,000 feet, but maybe 600,000 feet, are individualizing their buildings as well. So it's kind of creative way retail's, changing with the times.
Well, Goaley, before we wrap up this episode, any parting shots?
No, again, I think Tom and Ted, we really appreciate them coming on. I think it was very interesting. I think, we was our first outdoor.
It was our first on site.
I love it. So yeah, we really thank Tom and Ted for doing that again. It was really interesting to hear, and certainly a positive interview in these tough times.
So find us on Facebook. Dan's on site. We'll post information on. We'll always post the shows on Facebook. We'll also post shows coming up, who we're going to interview. Our next interview is set, and I'm super excited for it because he's the man, the myth, the legend, really. But we won't talk.
He's going to show us up.
He always shows me
sure.
up. So anyway, find us on Facebook, YouTube channel. Obviously, Dan's on site. We're on Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts. More coming soon. So find our podcast too. And I think our biggest announcement is hopefully coming soon, and that'll be the website. So anyway, there's more to come from Dan's On Site. Thank you very much for joining us today. You can always find Dan and I on LinkedIn or email us as well too. So thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.